read. It was really Carla's fault. We were in with Alex and Carla. We're in the bookshop and we got argued
100 Years
a
of
little bit.
Solitude.
I then covered it, and this was the other one. So James Joyce, The Dubliners. PJ's thrilled that I'm reading it, of course.
I'm not surprised.
Now, I'm going to stress that it's a week down the gutter. It was not a bad book. It was fine. But it was like, oh, you got to read Joyce. Like, Irish literature is so good, and Joyce is so important. Now, of course, I didn't read Ulysses. Maybe that's on me. But Carla's like, yeah, Dubliners would be really good. Well, it wasn't really anything. It was kind of nothing. I already don't remember it. Like, it's nothing. So...
Yeah, so I read the first bit, and I'm like, I think Dean's not going to like this unless it gets better. The first bit was like a funeral and people just talking around a table, and it's like, okay, nothing actually happens. Move on to the next bit. So there's no plot, and it's many different stories inside. Each chapter is a different
short.
story.
I mean, it's only 160 pages, but it's split into like several short stories. The last one, I think, is 30 pages. It's the longest. Some of them are quite short. So I always think short stories are more difficult because you don't have that much time to develop character and things like that. It's not that this was bad, but it was worse than all the other books I've read this month. So, you know, that's why it's going down the gutter. Maybe if I'd read it on a month where everything else was garbage, it would have just got up. But it's...
Yeah, no, fair.
It's difficult to say anything good about it. So here's the one-line summary. A bunch of Irish people are alcoholics and beat their wives. Like, that's all the stories. That's the book. Like, that's... I would think it would be good not to play into that negative stereotype so much. But that's all this is. It's like, oh, well, what if we beat our wives? Well, what if we beat our sons? You know, there's one story. I mean, most of these are only a few pages long. So he introduces some characters. This old guy's just like, well, if I ever found out any guys liked any girls, I'd whip them and whip them and whip them. And if I find them in the school liking girls, then I'd whip them some more. And it's like, cool. Is that the entire story then? That's all we have here?
Okay, so you would whip them if you wouldn't whip them if they liked boys? Like,
I don't know. I don't even think that crossed their mind. I don't really know who this is for. I mean, obviously this is someone from Ireland, I think not living in Ireland at the time. If this is supposed to make me fond of Ireland or make me think like, oh, that's a nice old place, it failed miserably. And any time when it is a little bit colloquial, I hate it. So
part of that might be your upbringing in a way, but it just makes people from Dublin seem violent and...
Yeah, there's nothing good about this. There's one that touches a bit on the religion. There's like I think it's a Protestant man marries a Catholic woman, theoretically converts, but like never really like goes to the confession and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a difficult
situation. So she brings some friends in, and they're like, we got to kind of hold an intervention here and get you to be more Catholic. And he kind of agrees to some stuff in principle, but his one, like the sticking point they can't get him past is no candles. It's like...
Oh no. Just let him have candles.
Yeah, but I don't know why. It's just like, that's the one. Like, I'll do the thing, but no candles. That's taking things too far.
Strange.
There's another one where like a guy's an alcoholic, and they're like, oh, we need to get him into work, get him a job, and they're like, no, because right now the little money he has he spends on drink, but when he's working he's even worse because he's got more money to spend on drink. And I was like, well, that would be funny, but
if it were funny like Black Cat, like when we watched Peter Lorre and Vincent Price, like that was fun, but
sometimes I just feel that these stories are sad and they make Ireland look crap, and I do live here, you know. I don't like it.
Would you say that it's similar to the naturalism though?
No, because the naturalism is enjoyable in like a shock factor kind of way. This is just nothing. There's one story as well where some guys... There's one that I liked, actually. The king is visiting. And they're like, well, we don't want the king. Why was he coming over here? And one guy's like, oh, what would Parnell have thought? You know, Irish hero of the Easter Rising. You know, was he the one? I think... No, he's not Patrick Pearse. Anyway, what would he have thought? And then someone makes a really good point. And he says... The Queen was around for such a long time, and never visited us. Her son is probably a normal guy to some extent. He waited and waited and waited and waited and waited for a position. Now he's finally ascended, and one of the first things he does is says, let's visit our neighbours in Ireland. He's like, I'm prepared to give him a chance.
Okay.
And I was like, that's kind of a nice, refreshing take. I actually kind of like that bit. But there's not much to like. I mean, here's one story after the race. They all just go for drinks after they watch a race. And they, toast to this person and toast to that person. They play cards. They toast to the Queen of Hearts and the Queen of Diamonds. And that's the story. And it's like, oh, okay. So people gambled and drank. Is that a story? The boarding house, Mrs. Mooney's daughter... Mrs. Mooney is a butcher's daughter. She's in a house. She's got her own daughter. She's the madam of the house. She's got a bunch of people coming and staying with her. It's like a lodging house, like a boarding house. I think her daughter flirts with some of the men. And that's it, because they're all short, so they don't go anywhere. And it's just like, I don't know if I care then. Like, it's difficult to get into it,
Yeah, you gotta give character. You gotta give story or something. If it's just like, this person did this, you're getting into like my issues with Kafka here. It's like,
yeah,
cool, this is just your thoughts on something. Like, it's just
there's a lot of men beating their women and then also men beating their kids. I mean, there's one here where the mum isn't available to cook food. I can't even remember if she's gone or dead or what it is, but the little boy decides he's going to try to cook for the dad. The dad's like, what? These just drunk men coming home after going out drinking every night and just coming home like, where's my dinner? And the little boy's kind of like, I guess I'll cook the dinner for you, Pa. But then does it badly, and the dad just beats him anyway. Like, don't ever mess the dinner up again. It's like, there's no likable people in Ireland. Like that's what this book made me feel, I just don't... I don't understand what the purpose of this book was. If this is your depiction of people from the place you're from that you're supposed to be looking back fondly on, I don't want to see this place. I don't want to go here. I don't...
That's fair.
So, in that sense, I think it's failed in what would be its only objective. Unless it is a bit more satiric. Not even satirical. Maybe it is meant to have a bit of a critique. Maybe he's saying the place wasn't that good.
That would make it a little bit better.
It would make more sense, but then it's like...
But people aren't going to read it that way.
No. I don't think they will. There's another one, Mrs. Kearney. Her daughter's going to be an actress. That's the third time that's come up this month. But she goes on... she's like, well, she's not going on until she gets paid. And then she makes like such a big scene that she destroys her daughter's acting career. Oh. That was kind of interesting. But again, it's like, well, how interesting can you be in like 5 pages? That's the problem with all these stories. They don't have time to breathe.
Then you look at the Dumas short stories.
Dumas does so much with like 6 pages. That's the thing.
So you remember the one which was basically a blood transplant or whatever it is.
Yeah. That one.
That was 3 pages maximum, I think, and
it was very
so
powerful.
moving.
Yeah,
I remember it so clearly.
A long time ago, was it Leah Hackett? There was an author that wrote some short stories, and PJ and I reviewed it, and we were both on the back cover on the blurb with our reviews. And nice. Those were all short stories, but she was so powerful in them all. Like, some of them, it was like, oh, these are so good, and you were able to put development with the characters into such a short period of time. And there's a real skill to doing that. There isn't really any of that here. It's just like, there's some people and they drink, Cool. Yeah. Is that cool, I guess? Like, I just don't know what this is meant to be, There's sometimes they try to do a bit of love stories. There's one, they ask a girl, Greta, like, what did your lover die of so young? And she's like, oh, I think he died for me. And she tells, like, a little bit of a story about their relationship and heartbreak. But the end of it is the guy listening to her being like, and you kind of see his inner monologue, and he's like, he certainly wouldn't have died for you the way you look now, because you're old and unattractive. It's like, oh, wow, okay. Like, are you horrible? Like,
who says that? Who talks like that?
Yeah, I just don't... whatever. I'm sorry, don't get me wrong, right? I read these, some of them were relatively enjoyable. It's a short book, it's very... I picked this one deliberately because it was shorter than Ulysses. God.
Yeah.
But it
doesn't make you want to read it.
It doesn't make me want to read anymore. it definitely wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great. You know,
Yeah, it was.
it was just honestly, it was nothing.
It was €5, so
Yeah.
cheap enough.
But I mean, after being told, oh, it's important or it's good, I'm like, it was nothing. I have nothing to say about it. You know.
I'd be curious to hear what other people think. Like, because Carla recommended it, what would Carla say?
Yeah, we'll check with Carla. Maybe because a lot of it seems very normal to me. Maybe if you're not from Ireland, it seems better or different or more interesting or something. But the characters are just so bland because it's like I'm just like, oh, these are just Irish people. I see them all the time. You know?
Maybe.